So the participants are coming. Değerli konuklar ve bugün burada dünyanın farklı bölgelerinden bir araya gelmiş olan değerli panelistler, Finansal Okuryazarlık ve Erişim Derneği tarafından düzenlenen Küresel Para Haftası'nın Türkiye kapanış etkinliğine hoş geldiniz. Bazılarınıza günaydın derken bazılarınıza iyi akşamlar dilemek isterim. Önce webinarla ilgili birkaç teknik konuya değineyim. Etkinliğimizin giriş kısmını Türkçe yapıp daha sonra İngilizceye döneceğiz. Panel sırasında yapılan Türkçe konuşmalar İngilizceye, İngilizce konuşmaları da Türkçe'ye çeviriyor olacağız. Dili değiştirmek için ekranın alt kısmında dünya ikonu ile gösterilen çeviri butonuna tıklamanız yeterli olacak. Tercümanlarımıza da şimdiden teşekkür etmek isterim. Konuşmacılarımıza sormak istediğiniz sorular olması durumunda soru cevap kısmına soruyu kime yönelttiğinizi de belirterek yazmanızı rica ediyorum. Konuşmaların ardından sorularınızı muhataplarına yönlendirme fırsatımız olacaktır. Ben Ece Beydağı, Finansal Okuryazarlık ve Erişim Derneği'nin genel sekreteriyim ve webinarı ben modere edeceğim. Bu webinarı Küresel Para Haftası'nın kapanış etkinliği olarak organize ettik ama Türkiye'de etkinliklerimiz aslında hafta sonunda devam ediyor olacak. Küresel Para Haftası, Child and Youth Finance tarafından başlatılmış olan ve 2019'dan beri OECD'nin inisiyatifiyle tüm dünyada eş zamanlı yürütülen bir kampanya. 10 yıldır her yıl Mart ayının son haftasında çocuklara ve gençlere parayla ilgili ileri dönük bakmayı öğretmeyi hedefleyen, çocuklara ve gençlere finansal okuryazarlık eğitimleri ve etkinlikleriyle doğru bilgi, tutum ve davranışların aktarıldığı bir hafta. Şimdiye kadar 176 ülkeden 53 milyon çocuğa ulaşıldı. Bugünkü etkinliğimizde giderek entegre olan bir dünyada daha etkili ve hızlı sonuçlara ulaşmak için finansal okuryazarlık eğitimlerinin ulusal politikalarla koordine edilmelerinin önemi ve belki gençlerin birer dünya vatandaşı olması yolunda bu uygulamaların ülkeler arasında da yakınlaştırılması konusunu tartışmaya açmak istedik. Bu kapsamda bugün konuklarımızın dünyanın farklı noktalarından, Paris'ten, OECD'den, Hindistan'dan, Malezya'dan ve Türkiye'den iyi uygulama örneklerini ve önerilerini dinleme fırsatımız olacak. Bu nedenle kendilerine sizler önünde çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bu giriş kısmından sonra İngilizceye döneceğim ve sözü konuşmacılarımıza vereceğim. Her konuşmadan önce konuşmacılarımızı sizlere kısaca tanıtıyor olacağım. Mr. Attila Köksal, the chairman of the board of FODER since 2019, will be giving us his opening speech today. Originally a mechanical engineer from Bosphorus University in Turkey with an MBA degree from Drexel University of Philadelphia, Mr. Attila Köksal has worked as an investment banker in top managerial positions for more than 35 years. Before being the chairman of FODER, he was the chairman of the Turkish Capital Markets Association and was a board member in Turkey's stock exchange, Borsa Istanbul, and the CFA Institute. He has great experience in investor behavior and gives lectures to MBA students in Sabancı University on behavioral finance. He is currently on the board of Turkish Digital Technologies, which is a subsidiary of Turkish Bank and WWF. Attila Bey is with FODER since its foundation 10 years ago, and he will be talking about FODER and financial literacy in Turkey. So please, Attila Bey.
Thank you very much, Ece Hanım. Good morning, dear guests, dear panelists, welcome. I am honored to deliver the opening speech of today's webinar. Today, we have a great group of panelists from OECD, India, Malaysia, and Turkey. So I am looking forward to hearing their speeches. Just briefly on the Financial Literacy and Inclusion Association of Turkey, which we name FODER for short. We are a non-profit organization which aims to increase Turkey's financial literacy level and raise awareness on financial inclusion in Turkey. We have a special focus on women, children, and youth. We work in cooperation with many governmental agencies, private companies, and other NGOs. FODER was founded in Istanbul in 2012 with the motto of a strong economy coexists only with a financially literate society. And just like Global Money Week, this year we are celebrating our 10th anniversary. We've been a part of the Global Money Week celebration since its foundation, since its beginnings. And just this Monday, the Turkish Global Money Week started with the gong ceremony at our stock exchange, Borsa Istanbul, with the participation of mid-school and high school students. FODER is the first NGO in Turkey that focuses on financial literacy and financial inclusion. Let me just briefly tell you about how we promote our efforts in our country. We basically built our activities on 5 pillars. And these are the building blocks of our integrated approach to further financial literacy and financial inclusion in Turkey. The first one is awareness. By creating awareness, we try to influence the society as a whole about how important financial literacy is and how it affects the lives of each and every one of us. The second one is creating a community. We are building communities to spread our messages and our body of knowledge. We understand the importance of technology and social media and use them to leverage our efforts. Just to give you an example, we established 2 book clubs, which one of them is targeting youth. And every month we read a book on finance or economics and meet with the author at the end of the month to discuss the book. Later, we share these recordings of these sessions on social media. We are in close touch with the finance, economy, and financial literacy clubs of many high schools and universities. And the backbone of our community efforts is our strong volunteer base, which supports us in all our activities. Our third pillar is advocacy. So our board is composed of seasoned business people with diverse backgrounds. We have representatives from finance, technology, communications, and advisory services sectors. And one of our speakers today, Ms. Canan Bayrak, is one of our board members. And leveraging the relationships of our board members, we spend a lot of time on spreading our messages in both the private and public sectors. Our fourth pillar is training programs and seminars. This is basically the backbone of our association's activity. We target students, women, civil servants, members of the army, farmers, private sector employees, and blue-collar workers. Most of our activities are conducted in cooperation with our corporate members. We utilize technology more and more to educate masses rather than smaller groups. Over time, we realized the fact that financial literacy programs by themselves cause limited behavior change. That is why we integrated behavioral science into our work. For the last 2 years, we've been working closely with the Common Sense Lab of Duke University, led by the well-known behavioral scientist, Professor Dan Ariely. As part of a global project conducted in 3 countries, namely Turkey, Mexico, and China, we are working on behavioral intervention projects together with financial institutions. Our goal is to help people make sounder financial decisions. We developed our know-how on cognitive and emotional biases and on social influence. We believe that combining our financial education trainings with behavioral interventions and using the technology will significantly improve the effectiveness of our efforts. Last but not least, our 5th pillar is policy recommendation and call for action. We believe sustainable finance and financial well-being of people can only be reached through an integrated national policy for financial literacy. We also believe that the financial literacy education should be integrated into our national education system, and students should acquire financial knowledge and skills at an early age, starting as soon as a primary school level. I can gladly say that in recent years, our Ministry of Education started responding to our call. some financial literacy topics have already been integrated into the math classes for high school students. Obviously, these are not enough. We need to make financial literacy a life skill and equip our students with the right knowledge, attitude, and behavior. Global Money Week is a great campaign to create awareness on these issues. During this week, children and young people talk about money and learn the importance of financial literacy. It is also a great opportunity to raise awareness on these issues at the policymaker level. As I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, we have a distinguished panel of speakers. And the topic of our panel is coordinating national efforts on financial literacy. As an outside observer, I know that both India and Malaysia have been very successful in this effort. And OECD has been facilitating such efforts in many different countries, including Turkey. Our panelist from Turkey, as I mentioned earlier, Ms. Canan Bayrak, is a FODER board member. She will talk about how financial technology can be used to increase the financial literacy level of children and youth. So I am looking forward to hearing the best practices our panelists will share with us. Thank you very much.
Attila Bey, thank you for these opening remarks. Now I want to turn to our guest speakers. We want to take a snapshot of the national efforts on financial education and what are the best practices and challenges. We hope to find some answers to these questions like, is financial education coordinated within your countries? And if so, how did those coordinated efforts help to improve the financial education, financial literacy, and financial inclusion? What are the main roles and functions of the government, the schools, the private sector, the financial institutions? And how are the stakeholders, schools, and teachers are motivated? How did COVID-19 add new challenges or opportunities here? What are the materials and tools available for young people, students, and teachers in terms of e-learning or in terms of school curriculum? What can digital technology and even social media offer in financial education and financial literacy in terms of methodology, content development, and engagement of young people? How can awareness be raised among youth? Are there any preferred ways in topic selection and learning methods? And can Global Money Week activities be a role model for financial education in countries? I first want to give the word to Ms. Bianca Isaincu, who is a policy analyst in OECD. Ms. Bianca Isaincu is a policy analyst in the Consumer Finance, Insurance, and Pensions Division, working on financial education, technical assistance projects, and financial inclusion. She has contributed to developing reports on digital financial inclusion of youth and youth financial education, and supported countries develop their national strategies for financial education. Previously, she has been a senior manager at the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, AFI, oversighting institutional relations between AFI and its member base, composed of financial regulatory authorities, and where she was also responsible for in-country implementation. Bianca has been working in the field of financial education and financial inclusion since 2012. Holds a bachelor degree in economics and a master's degree in international and development economics from University of Pavia, Italy. So Bianca, first, thank you for being with us today. Regarding the webinar's main topic, I wonder about the OECD's point of view on best practices on financial education and the role of national policies on financial education. I believe you are at one of those positions which have a broad perspective on that matter. Can you please share your data or insights about how national policies can shape financial literacy and inclusion? What are the best ways to help young people and the teachers to raise financial literacy and inclusion? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you for the invitation. And let me actually start today by, well, you asked me a lot of very good questions, and I'll try to answer some of them. I'm not sure if I will be able to answer all of them because,
sure.
Of course, a lot to say, but I want to start first of all with congratulating you for your 10th anniversary of FODER. So it's been a great journey. I know that, and it's been great also to have FODER alongside us to celebrate Global Money Week since the beginning. And I also want to thank everyone who has been celebrating Global Money Week this year. And I would like to go to the next slide. And these are pictures from last year, but you'll see that energy that is around Global Money Week each year is amazing. Next slide, please. And I want to say thank you. We had 113 countries which have participated in Global Money Week. It's really impressive to me every year how many countries join efforts during this week and organize different events. We've seen workshops, we've seen trainings, fairs, competition, games, everything happening around the world. Every year, it's been amazing. This year again, we've seen countries showing resilience to participate in these events, despite the global circumstances and, of course, also national challenges. And this, to us, is really a testimony that Global Money Week is having an impact, and that the financial literacy for young people continues to be extremely relevant. In fact, and this is linked to the question and the topic of today's webinar, coordination and collaboration. The strength of the Global Money Week is that of bringing together a really big range of stakeholders which are pursuing the same goal, which is the making the money part of the conversation in all types of platforms and channel, and especially focusing on young people, but not only on young people, also on their parents and teachers. Of course, this year, the conversation is still very much needed, although we've been in this business for 10 years. As FODER already know, we are not yet there, and the challenges we are living in, and the changes that are happening to our financial systems, and really make this conversation even more important. And I also want to say that another point that highlights the importance of cooperation is exactly this, the fact that these challenges and everything that is happening around the world is interconnected. It does not regard only one country or only one region, but they are systemic, and they really need cooperation, not only within countries, but also globally. And this is why the OECD and its network for international network on financial education and the Global Money Week is all about. So continuing on this question of, is coordination or is cooperation important also at national level? I want to mention, of course, the answer is yes, absolutely. And on the next slide, I want to show you what are the OECD's recommendations in this sense. As I mentioned, the Global Money Week, of course, is all about collaboration and cooperation, but the OECD has also issued a recommendation, which was adopted by the OECD Council in October 2020, during the year of the pandemic in a way, but of course, this has been in the work for many years because OECD has been working on financial education and literacy for the past 20 years. And one of the key issues that the OECD recommendation on financial literacy highlights is the importance of establishing and implementing a national strategy for financial literacy. This is seen as a coordinated approach to financial education efforts. It is a long-term approach to address limited financial literacy and resilience, not only of the young people, but of different target groups, which also need, of course, tailored interventions and tailored strategies. We know that from the OECD database and information that currently 75 countries around the world are developing or implementing a national strategy, which is based also on OECD principles for the national strategy development. The OECD recommendation, of course, also highlights a few other issues. The second one is the issue of making sure that the financial literacy covers the various sectors of the financial landscape. For example, issues that are linked to savings, to pensions, investment, credit, and insurance, and of course, taking into consideration the digitalization of finance that has happened over the past years. And last but not least, of course, it's important to ensure that all financial education programs are delivered effectively and efficiently. And there's a good practice in that sense. And I was happy to hear Mr. Attila Köksal this morning sharing a few of those already, which includes digital delivery, of course, also the use of behavioral insights, because of course we know that we wish all of us were rational and made rational choices, but we know that we are affected by behavioral biases, and we have to work on those, and we have to take those into consideration when we develop our programs and we develop our policies. And of course, very important is the evaluation of all these initiatives to make sure that we assess the impact of what happens, and we make sure that we know how to adjust the course within our implementation and afterwards. This is, all of these issues are very important, and the COVID-19 pandemic has even more highlighted how these issues are really at the core of ensuring that financial literacy is at the core of ensuring that people are resilient to shocks and to financial difficulties. And I want to continue this presentation by showing you a few slides and a few data, because as you know, the OECD's work is really based on data and evidence. And why I'm saying that financial education has been even more important within the COVID context than even before, if that's even possible. We know that for the past 2 years, we have been living in a very highly uncertain environment. And of course, now we feel like the pandemic might be behind us, but there are other global risks that continue to affect our economies and our consumers. And we know that already before the pandemic, individuals were dealing with very low levels of financial literacy and financial resilience. And here on the slide, I want to show you the levels of financial resilience of consumers in some countries, which these levels are before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So we published this report in June 2020, but the data was collected towards the end of 2019. So on the slide here, we have one measure of financial resilience. And if we think of financial resilience as the ability of individuals or households to resist the financial shock and to cope with the financial consequences of unexpected events. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic was an unexpected event that really had negative influence on people's sources of money. Many of the people have suffered from reduction of loss or reduction or loss of income due to temporary or permanent job loss. So they had to deal with that. But these data shows us what is the scope of the challenge. In fact, the indicator here shows the availability of a financial cushion in case of income loss. And that is the percentage of people who could continue to live their life and to take care of the expenses that they had for a specific period of time if they lost their main source of income without borrowing, without losing their house or having to lose their house and so on. So what you can see is that on average in the OECD participating countries, about 25% of adults were able to support themselves for just 1 month if they lost their source of income. And we see that in some countries, for example, half of the population, for instance, if you look at the left side of the screen, Montenegro and Georgia or Moldova, for instance, half of the population were able to support themselves for just 1 week if they lost, or less than 1 month if they lost their main source of income. And at the same time, the survey also shows us that around, the people are worrying about paying for their normal expenses, that they have stress related to money and so on. So on the next slide, we also looked at is financial resilience then, as we define it and as I just showed, is this linked to financial literacy in some way? And not surprisingly, yes, the limited financial resilience is limited to limited financial literacy. And on average, we saw that the financial literacy score in OECD countries was 13 out of 21 possible score, the maximum, which was. And on average, we also saw that individuals who reported availability of savings of more than 3 months, so that's, let's say, a good level of financial resilience, they have also consistently and significantly higher financial literacy score. So this shows us that financial literacy is indeed associated to financial resilience. And this is important because sometimes we think about financial literacy and we think, oh, financial literacy is nice to have. But in fact, financial literacy is not something that we want to achieve per se. It is a tool that helps consumers really achieve financial resilience and financial well-being. And this is the final objective of the financial literacy work that we are doing. And obviously, we are talking about young people, and we know that young people have been very hardly hit by the pandemic. Many vulnerable groups have lower financial literacy as well, and they have also been the hardest hit by the COVID pandemic. On the next slide, you will see some data that we have collected, that the OECD has collected throughout the last year from almost 50 countries and economies. We indicated that, of course, micro, small, medium-sized entrepreneurs, low-income populations, unskilled workers were very hard hit by the pandemic, but also between 50 and 60% also indicated that young people with low digital or financial literacy especially were also especially negatively hit by the pandemic. And we know that young people, and especially vulnerable youth, the COVID-19 crisis has really brought significant risk for them in terms of not only financial issues, but education, employment, and mental health. They already had less income at their disposal compared to previous generation. Young people are 2.5 times more likely to be unemployed than people aged 25 to 64. And less than half of the young people across the OECD countries express trust in government. So that's also an important issue to keep in mind. And we know that already young people were suffering from the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, which had left young people shouldering a lot of the social and economic consequences and had left 1 in 8 young people in poverty. So, of course, they have also limited financial assets, which puts especially the most vulnerable young people at an increasing risk of falling below the poverty line within 3 months if their income is stopping, for instance. So this has been a particularly challenging time for young people. In addition to everything I've mentioned, we know that many have dealt with loneliness, with isolation, and also with insecurity for their financial future. But at the same time, there have been other issues that have emerged, and young people have also realized and are basically showing us the way of how important it is to take care of our climate, for example, and how important it is to align your values with what you do. And in fact, in some countries, we've seen that young people have led this phenomenon, which is called the Great Resignation, where they quit their jobs and they go to look for other jobs which align better with changes that they want to see in the society. So there's so many things happening, and young people in the way are ahead of us, and we have to make sure that they are supported and in this process. And of course, the policymakers and all of us actually have an important role to play. And over the past years at the OECD, we've worked on developing materials and support to policymakers on how they can support the young people. And on the next slide, you will see several documents that we've released. On the starting from the left, we have a policy handbook on financial education for young people, which actually discusses the implementation and the importance of the implementation of financial education in the schools, but also how else financial education can be delivered to young people. Then we have worked on advancing the digital financial inclusion of youth, which was a report that we have written and released jointly with the GPFI under the G20 Saudi presidency. And recently, we've also released a report on youth financial education in Southeast Europe. So all these are important tools that can help policymakers to understand, of course, where there is a need for that, how young people can be supported through financial literacy and financial inclusion, because as it has been said before, indeed, financial literacy is an essential skill. And we need to make sure collectively that young generation are equipped with this skill. And you've asked me as well, are financial awareness campaigns important? Definitely. It was mentioned by Mr. Köksal that this is an opportunity to start the conversation, but we need to ensure that this conversation is continuous. It's not just about the week. It's about the systemic approach that we can take to financial education for young people. And obviously, what better way to do that than considering the integration of financial education in the school curriculum? Again, as Mr. Köksal said, and it's great to see that in Turkey, this process has started. And I want to leave you with just a couple of, let's say, suggestions about financial education for young people integration in school on the last slide. And I want to mention that definitely it's not easy to achieve. It's not easy to do. There's challenges to this process. Many times, there's low priority attached to this, there are crowded school curriculums, competing demands, the teachers which have limited skills and confidence, limited teaching resources, and there's many challenges to this. But the benefits of including financial education in the school curriculum are extraordinary, because we have to remember that young people need to get financial education from early ages, because the habits are formed in childhood and impact on the financial outcomes in adulthood. Now, we have to remember that not all parents are in a position to teach their children financial literacy skills. In fact, we've seen that financial literacy or financial illiteracy is associated with socioeconomic background. So that's also important. Those that maybe need the most financial literacy are the ones that get it the least. We know that it is also very important to take advantage of teachable moments, of the teachable context. And what better way to do that than in a school context? There is the possibility of ensuring high quality delivery, because there is the possibility, of course, to teach the teachers, to give teachers the confidence to do this. And obviously, there's the possibility of a wide reach and ensuring that all young children in the country, for instance, are reached by financial literacy. So this is, in a nutshell, the systemic approach to financial literacy that I think it is important. Of course, integration in financial education, but not only. We don't have to stop there. As I said, it is an opportunity. Global Money Week campaigns are an opportunity to have this conversation and continue it. And we have to remember that it has to be continuous and systemic. And I remember that in our last webinar, we had Mr. Hariharan, which is the next speaker on this session. And he had said something that everybody really liked, and I also liked very much. He said, Global Money Week campaign is an accelerator. We have to put the foot on the pedal and accelerate during the Global Money Week campaign, the efforts for financial literacy. But the rest of the year is just as important. We have to continue driving. So this is what I would like to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Isaincu, for your insights and all the information that you have provided us. Actually, the low level of the availability of financial cushion is very striking. And just as you mentioned rightfully, we are in the beginning of a change in financial system as a whole in the world. So financial literacy is really one of the most important life skills. Thank you for sharing the resources of OECD for financial education for young people. And we can see that OECD already has a very sound roadmap on how to tackle financial literacy in countries. And I hope more countries will be added to those 75 that you have mentioned and place a roadmap and form a policy. So now I want to turn to Mr. Hariharan from India. Mr. Hariharan is currently working as the Chief General Manager at Securities and Exchange Board of India, the securities market regulator of the country. Mr. Hariharan heads the communications division in the office of Chairperson, SEBI. He also heads the investor education department. He's also the secretary to the board of SEBI. Mr. Hariharan is a member of advisory committee on SEBI Investor Protection and Education Fund. He is the director on the board of National Center for Financial Education, a non-profit company established by financial sector regulators for promoting financial education activities in India. He represents SEBI in various international committees, including IOSCO Committee 8 for retail investors and various OECD and INFE committees. He has a passion for financial education and has spoken in various national and international fora. Mr. Hariharan, with an experience of over 35 years, started his career as a banker in the State Bank of India, which is the leading public sector bank. He later joined the Government of India as an officer of Indian Information Service and worked in various departments in Government of India. He also served for 3 years at Prime Minister's Office, Government of India. He has been working in SEBI for more than 2 decades and has worked in various departments there. He is a postgraduate in English, public administration, and has a master's degree in law, specialized in business law. Mr. Hariharan is also a certified associate of the Indian Institute of Bankers. So, Mr. Hariharan, thank you for being with us today. We are so glad that you could be here. We are really excited to hear about India's experience on financial education. You have such an experience on different pillars of financial and public sectors. And India is such a big country, and yet we know that you have some very effective methods in terms of coordinating financial education. So we wonder, how did India do it? Can you please share with us the Indian experience?
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. And it was a privilege listening to Mr. Attila Köksal today morning about how Turkey is taking financial literacy and education to greater heights. And also, I think both the interventions by Mr. Köksal and Bianca has set the tone for the deliberations of today. So at the outset, I would like to compliment FODER for thinking about organizing such an event at a global level, and when we are celebrating Global Money Week across the world. Global Money Week has become a big celebration of the year where all the countries, all the regulators, all the stakeholders come together and think about how financial literacy, we can take it further in our own respective jurisdictions, how to learn experiences from the other countries and other institutions and other jurisdictions, and how we can implement it. So I compliment the OECD also for taking the lead. And this time we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Global Money Week. So today, considering the time constraint, I will try to speak on how we do or how we take the financial education efforts in the country. What is the institutional mechanism that we have, how we have a coordinated approach in taking financial literacy to the various parts of the country. And also on during the pandemic, how do we take care of this? And also some of the challenges that we faced and how we are challenges that we are facing. And I will limit myself to the target groups of youth and children today, because that is what the Global Money Week is all for, even though we have a lot of programs for the adult financial literacy as well. So that is how I would like to make my presentation today. At the outset, as rightly pointed out, we are a nation of more than 1.2 billion population. And the youth constitute roughly about 16 to 17% of our population. So the challenge is to reach. And along with that, we have cultural differences, we have language differences. So there are a lot of challenges and even geographical differences that reaching them and taking them towards in inclusion in the financial literacy ambit. So what is the institutional mechanism that we have put in place? So at the apex level, we have what we call it as the Financial Stability and Development Council, which is chaired by the finance minister of the country. And it has the members of all the chairpersons of all the financial sector regulators who are members of that. And they drive, among other things, also the financial education literacy in the country. So there is appreciation at the highest level in the country that there is a need for financial education and there is a need for improving that in the country. Coming down below that, so as part of the FSCT activities, so the first thing that we have done was to have a financial strategy for national financial education. Bianca has already clearly laid out that how it has been OECD suggestions and all, and we are truly inspired by the OECD suggestions for a national financial strategy. And we framed a national financial strategy. We had a 13 to 18, we had the first strategy, and then we had the second strategy from 20 to 25. So after framing that strategy, we also did some peer review with even OECD and even with FSB South Africa to ensure that we are on the right track. So if I come to the second strategy that it is currently running, that is from 2025, to sum up that, we are basically putting it into 5 pillars, what we call it as 5 Cs. So the 5 Cs on which we talk about financial education on spreading across the country, the approach is that the number 1 C is content. We feel that the development of relevant content in the curriculum of schools, colleges, and training establishments, that is very, very important. The second C is capacity. So how do we develop capacity among the intermediaries who are providing financial services, leveraging the positive effect of the third C, that is the community, that is how the community model can be led for the spreading financial literacy. And the fourth C is appropriate communication strategies for spreading the financial education. And the fifth, but the most important C, which we are talking about today, is collaboration among various stakeholders. So these are the 5 Cs or the 5 pillars where we are promoting this national strategy. Now, how are we implementing this national strategy? So we have a 2-pronged way in which we are doing this. On one level, we have created an institutional called the National Center for Financial Education. So this is a non-profit company promoted by the financial sector regulators, where all of us are directors in that company. And this national strategy, basic implementation is the responsibility of this National Center for Financial Education. So that is the first level of collaboration that we have as an institutional approach towards spreading financial literacy. So we have periodical meetings. We define how do we go about in ensuring that the 5 Cs are implemented. And not only that, as I mentioned earlier, at the Financial Stability Development Council, it is being reviewed at every quarter that what is that we have achieved. And there are targets and there are lessons that are told that what we have achieved and what are the challenges that we have faced. So we have institutionalized the way in which we are doing it. And apart from this, so at the one level, we have that national center where there is a coordinated approach. Apart from this, there is at the individual level of each financial sector regulators, we have 4 separate financial regulators for securities market, for the banking sector, for the insurance sector, and the pension sector, we have separate regulators. So all the regulators, while contributing to this national financial education mission, also in their own area do financial education initiatives in their sector. For example, the SEBI takes care of the sectoral education that is relating to the investors in the securities market. The central bank takes care of the education of the banking sector. The pension regulator takes care of the pension related, and also the insurance regulator gives more focus on the insurance related issue. So the basic financial literacy is taken care of at the apex level, whereas the sectoral financial literacy is taken care of by the institutional level. And the product literacy, we leave it to the product manufacturers for themselves to spread that information. So this is the 3-level approach that we do. Now, coming back to some of the initiatives of the National Center for Financial Education. And in our national strategy, it is very important that the youth and children are one of the primary focus, while we have a focus on adult financial literacy as well. So what do we do to take it to the schools and colleges and the education institutions? See, one of the things that we do is financial education and training program for educational institutions, what we call as FUTP, where personal financial education training in the curriculum of educational institutions and to encourage students to understand the financial concepts from a young age. So this we do it at each and every wherever it is possible at the physical mode. Then we have another level where we call them as financial awareness and consumer training, FACT, where we feel that people who are the youngsters who are going to get into a job at the level of age which are relating to a job. So they have a separate training program for them that how to manage their finances once they are going to get into the job. So another important thing that we do is what we call as the Money Smart School program. So this is a very, very important initiative which we do for the schools and educational institutions, that we identify these institutions as money smart schools. So how do we do that? So the one is that let me also tell you that our chairperson already mentioned about how to take it into curriculum. So in our country also, we have tried to introduce into the curriculum, but you know that it is not a very easy job to get into the curriculum because nobody wants a separate subject to be added where children are already loaded with a lot of subjects to learn. So integrating the financial curriculum into subjects like English, subjects like mathematics, subjects like social sciences, so wherever possible. So we have created workbooks for different standards for different ages. And in our country, the educational system is that there is a national level education system, there is a curriculum, and there is a state level, there is a provincial level education system as well. So what we did was that at the provincial level, we have tried to introduce in various provincial educational institutions at that curriculum on what we call as the importance of the financial inclusion curriculum into the curriculum itself. At the national level, we are having the new educational policy. The talks are also how we can integrate the financial education into the curriculum of the school students. So what we do is that apart from this, where there are institutions where they not into the curriculum, so we go to the schools and educational institutions and tell them that we are going to declare you as a money smart program where we educate the school teachers and trainers, and they impart their further to going into the schools, and we give them the title that they are money smart school programs. This has been quite a very successful program. So apart from that, we have another thing called that what we do is that is a program for the school students and the youngsters to directly learn from an online program where we have developed a financial education program through online, where there is a curriculum and they can take a test and they will be certified as a financially educated person. So we have millions of people taking this test. It is an online test, so they can 24/7, it is available. So they are able to take this. And this is also another way of how we are taking these things to the youngsters. Apart from that, we also have educational booklets, we all that, the social media which is being used and all that. So coming back to how SEBI is doing, that we have one program called Resource Person Program, where we train the trainers and they go back to their respective places and they impart education also to such people, because many of the places, you know, even though we can say that digital is the way to go forward, we still feel that there are some areas where it is not very well digitally connected. So those areas we need to really go back, and there is an oral training which needs to be given. So we train the trainers and we pay them. And this is also, and we have covered nearly 6 million people across the country through this program. And it has been quite successful because we take the trainer from the local area, from the local geographical area, and he knows the local language as well. So these are some of the things which we do. And in the COVID pandemic, it was a challenge that how do we reach it? And definitely, as like in any other country, we did use the digital means of reaching out to these places, because during the COVID pandemic, we found there has been a record influx of new investors, especially youth, coming into the markets as well. So there was a challenge, and we were really concerned that whether they are coming into the market, knowing well aware of the risk coming into the market. So we did focused education programs for these new people who are coming into the market. So it is, as I said earlier, that it is a collaborative efforts of all the regulators together, taking insight into the curriculum as well. So when I talked about the coordinated effort, it is also that the expenses are also shared by the regulators at the national level when we are doing at the national this thing. So we have the e-learning modules also for anyone at various stages where can themselves declare as financially educated. So these are some of the key points that I want to take, because there are a lot of other things also, but constraint of time, I'm limiting it. The challenges ahead has been well told. I've been well, explained here by Bianca in her presentation. Those are really the challenges. So how do we bring the teachers? They don't want additional things. The teachers are not equipped. So that is really a challenge. The students, they don't want another subject for them to learn, but it is a fact, and there is a realization among the policymakers in the government and among the even among the students also these days, that there is a need for financial education as well. So during these times of Global Money Week and all, we do these sort of programs. And as I talk to you today, there are about 500 programs happening across the country on part of the Global Money Week, the financial education programs. So we do these quiz competitions, the essay competitions. So all those things that which can make them come into this fold of taking the financial literacy to them. And tomorrow, to conclude the Global Money Week celebrations, we have a principals conclave where we have invited the heads of the educational institutions across the country, where we are going to discuss the importance of financial education, how they can help in taking financial education in their respective schools and educational institutions, what are the challenges that they are likely to face, and how we can help them in giving them the material and the training. So to conclude, I would like to say these things, that any financial education, this thing, it needs a very well coordinated, well articulated and well structured strategy. We cannot have a one size fits all approach. Different target groups need different approaches. Youth and children definitely need special attention, including in school curriculum is very, very important. Financial literacy is no more a luxury. It is an essential life skill that is needed to be imparted and nurtured at a young age. So the efforts, one important thing is that all the efforts that are being taken need to be sustained level. And sometimes we need to do course correction while we go ahead with sort of programs. While we talk about financial education, I think we need to be conscious about financial inclusion as well, because while we create the demand through this financial education, we also should be aware of the fact that whether they are having enough access to the financial products that people are having and the products that are available meeting their financial requirements. Use of technology cannot be underlined more. We need to do more. So ultimately, we need to ensure that the financial literacy should need not only to the financial well-being and also to build resilience to the people. So that is how I think we should program our financial education efforts. I would love to take questions if there are any. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Hariharan. It is so hopeful that you have such a well-established policy and structure in such a big country. It really gives us hope. So my understanding is that the policy should be from top to bottom, detailed and supported with sub policies, and then the responsible party who should be implementing it should be definite, it should be specific as well. So thank you for your presentation. The next two speakers will be the representatives of the ecosystem that is created around financial literacy and inclusion efforts from two countries, one from Malaysia and one from Turkey. First, I want to extend a warm welcome to Ms. Alina Amir from Malaysia. Ms. Alina Amir is a trained teacher.
Sayın Amir'e teşekkür ediyorum. Kendisi Arus Akademi'nin eş kurucusu ve Malezya'daki sosyal girişim konularına odaklanıyor. Burada uygulayarak öğrenme ve proje bazlı öğrenme inisiyatifinin de bir parçası. Finansal okuryazarlık programı WT Takafon ile birlikte yapılıyor. Bu program açık kaynaklı bir finansal okuryazarlık ve eğitim malzemeleri sağlıyor bu program. Bugün Fund for Life 3000'den fazla öğrenciye ulaşmış, 1000'den fazla öğretmene ulaşmış durumda ve dijital ayak izleri 200.000'den fazla erişime sahip olmuş durumda. Sayın Amir, sizin deneyiminizi dinliyor olacağız şimdi. Biraz bize Fund for Life'tan bahsedebilir misiniz?
And we know there is a financial education network in Malaysia as well. How did that help in building and growing your activities?
Thank you. It's my pleasure to share. But let me set up my screen. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Alina. I am the program lead of Fund for Life. We are a financial literacy program in Malaysia. So I'm really honored to be here, to be speaking alongside the panelists today. And my sharing today will come from the perspective of private sectors and civil society, specifically on my own experience designing and executing financial education programs. So I might not be able to give a more holistic national level effort on financial education, but I can share the important partnerships that we've established and the efforts that we've taken to support the national level effort on financial education. So Fund for Life has been around since 2019. And one of the most important aspects about this program is really the collaboration between a financial institution, in this case, FWD Takaful, and an education social enterprise civil society, where I come from, Arus Academy. And I
İşbirliği önemli. Ve birisi olmadan hep beraber bir şeyler yapabileceğimize açıkçası zor inanıyorum. Bu bizim eğitim programımızdan bir görüntü. Özellikle çocuklarla ve özellikle zorlu yerlerden gelen çocuklarla alakalı yürüttüğümüz programlar. Ve biliyoruz ki endüstrinin kendisinden finansal bilgiye bizim bir erişimimiz var. Dolayısıyla bu bilgilerimizi ve kaynaklarımızı programımıza dahil etmeye çalıştık. Endonezya'dan bir paydaşımız var. Bu bir finansal eğitim network platformu. Bu network sayesinde Merkez Bankası'nın ve Güvenlik Konseyi'nin yönetmeliği altında çalışıyor. Diğer devlete bağlı ajanslarla ve kuruluşlarla çalışıyoruz. 4 tane ana sütunumuz var. Özellikle gençler söz konusu olduğunda farkındalığa, becerilere ve sorumluluğa odaklanıyoruz. Eğitimciler açısından finansal eğitiminin yeniden görüntülenmesine ve birlikte eğitim kaynaklarının ortak bir şekilde yaratılmasına ve anlamlı bir şekilde yaratılmasına odaklanıyoruz. Savunuculuk anlamında ise çocukları dahil etmeye çalışıyoruz. Onları finansal sistemlere kazandırmaya çalışıyoruz. Bu programların yeniden tasarımını ve savunuculuğunu yapıyoruz ve dijital anlamda ise finansal eğitime erişimi mümkün olduğunca çok insana ulaştırmaya çalışıyoruz. Peki bir eğitimci olarak bu deneyimden ne bahsedebilirim? Kendi becerilerim konusunda, para yönetme becerilerim konusunda kendime olan güvenim değişti. Kendime dair düşüncelerim değişti. Çünkü bu eğitimin sonucunda parayı nasıl yönetebileceğim konusunda daha fazla bilgiye sahibim. Ve burada da anlattığım gibi yüksek riskli ortamlardan, yerlerden, okulu bırakan çocuklardan bahsediyoruz. Ve bu programların sonucunda zorlukları, güvensizlikleri paylaştık Bayrak konusunda. Ve finansal açıdan bunları bilmek bence çok önemli. Ve bütçeleme, takip etme gibi konulara odaklanmak yerine alışkanlıkları, para yönetimi alışkanlıklarını eğitmeye çalışıyoruz. Programımıza simülasyonlar, roleplay, oyunlar gibi metodolojiler uyguladık. Parayı nasıl yönetebileceklerini bu eğlenceli yollarla çocuklara ve gençlere anlatmaya çalıştık. Aynı zamanda evliliği, çocuk sahibi olmanın oyunlarının simülasyonunu yaptık. Beklenmeyen olayları, senaryoların simülasyonunu yaparak çocuklara bu gibi durumlar karşısında nasıl aksiyon alabileceklerini öğretmeye çalıştık ve gördük ki çocuklar doğru para kararlarını vermekten çok mutlu olduklarını gördük. Simülasyonda tabii ki gerçek para kullanmadık. Aksiyonların iyileştirilmesine odaklandık. Ve aynı zamanda belirli bakanlıklarla, hocalarla çalıştık, topluluk liderleriyle birlikte, merkezlerle birlikte çalıştık. Bu 3 günlük bir program saatlerce devam ediyor ve ardından görüşlerimizi paylaşıyoruz. Covid meydana geldiğinde gerçekten çok hızlı düşünmek zorunda kaldık. Aynı enerjiyi online ortamda nasıl verebiliriz düşündük. Bizim için en kolayı online'da mevcut olmamızda bir portal yaptık. Özellikle finansal okuryazarlık ve eğitim konusunda bunu yaptık. Öğrenciler için, eğitmenler için, ebeveynler için bunu yaptık. 3-4 haftalık bir online eğitimimiz oldu. Offline kitler hazırladık. Bunları öğrencilere verdik. Telegram üzerinden, Google Meet üzerinden, Zoom üzerinden her gün öğrencilerle onlara destek olmak için bir araya geldik. Ve Covid gerçekten bizim yaratıcılığımızı, özellikle para konusundaki eğitimlerle ilgili yaratıcılığımızı ortaya çıkardık. Ve İngilizceye tercüme etmem gerekirse rüyalarınızı takip edin, rüyalarınızı kovalayın amaçlı bir programımız oldu. Görsel sanatçılarla, TV sunucularla, girişimcilerle bir araya geldik. Ekspatlarla bir araya geldik, influencerlarla bir araya geldik. Çocukların halihazırda takip ettikleri kişiliklerle bir araya geldik ve para kazanma konusundaki tutkularını canlandırmaya çalıştık. Ve bunu geçtikten sonra parayı nasıl yönetebileceklerini öğretmeye çalıştık. Dolayısıyla finansal okuryazarlık ve hayallere sahip olma arasındaki bağlantıyı göstermeye çalıştık. Finansal dahil olma zorluklarını dijital anlamda bu konuda programlar yaptığımızda ve bu konudaki farkındalığı yükseltmeye çalıştığımızda gördük ki burada bir sürü inovatif çözümlerimiz var. Ve burada gençlik komiteleri kurduk. İlk finansal dahil etme gençlik komitesini kurduk. Geçen cuma günü hayata geçtik. 3 saatlik finansal dahil etme programı ve kriz yönetimi programı yürüttük. Ve eminim siz de biliyorsunuz. Gerçekten buradaki tasarım ve öğrencilere verdiğimiz şeyler benim de çok hoşuma gitti. Ekibe gitgide gençler, daha fazla gençler katılıyor ve para hakkında konuşma konusundaki stigmayı kaldırmaya çalıştık. Ve para sadece bir araçtır ve para sizlerin kim olduğunu tanımlamaz. Hem genç ekibim hem genç komitesi Instagram'da live sessionlar yaptılar, para hakkında konuştular ve para konusunda neden konuşmaktan çekindiğimize dair bir oturumumuz oldu ve bizlerle birlikte bu videoları izleyen ve kendi hikayelerini paylaşan insanlarla bir araya geldik. Çünkü gerçekten para konusunda konuşmakta zorlanıyorlardı. Komik çizimler, TikTok videoları, çeşitli videolar hazırladık. Bir sürü planımız var. Ve finansal okuryazarlıkta bütün bunları paylaşmak gerçekten benim için çok heyecan verici. Ve sunumumun son kalan birkaç dakikasında öğrenciler ve gençler hakkında konuşmak istiyorum. Hocalarla, ebeveynlerle birlikte çalışıyoruz. Her sosyal medya platformunda, TikTok'ta, Telegram'da, Instagram'da varız. Dolayısıyla dijital dünyada varlığımızı sürdürmek gerçekten zor olabilir. Fakat bu platformlarda gençlerle birlikte bir arada olmanın çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyorum. Çok teşekkür ederim bugün beni dinlediğiniz için. Sorunuz olursa onlara memnuniyetle cevap vermek isterim. Biz teşekkür ediyoruz Alina.
Presentation that's I put in my pocket. So collaboration between the civil society and private sector is very important. And when you are a member of the financial education network, the credibility of the institutions increase as well. You are working to change the mindsets, but you do it in a way that especially young people can be a part of it, you know, through games or through discussions, through talking about money. I'm very happy to see that you have adapted to the COVID-19 phase as well. That's something we have been learning all together as a world now. So thank you very much for your presentation again. And last but not least, we have Ms. Canan Bayrak with us today. She will be representing the ecosystem that is created around financial literacy as well. Canan Bayrak is also a board member of FODER, but today she is with us as an entrepreneur. She is the founder of MANIBUX, a digital pocket money management startup focusing on young people and their families. Ms. Canan Bayrak has a degree on guidance and psychological counseling from Bosphorus University and is mother of 2 daughters. She is a digital business leader in Turkey with experience in fintech. She had a chance to observe the needs and the problems of the families and teens when she worked for 17 years in different schools at different levels. Then, with the help of her professional background and being the mother of a 16 and 13-year-old daughters, she noticed that there's a huge need in the market for digital transformation of pocket money for teens, and then she created her startup. As a psychological counselor, Canan Bayrak established MANIBUX to teach financial literacy to the teens between 8 to 18 years with the help of their families. She will be presenting in Turkish today, so I want to ask my question in Turkish as well. Canan Hanım, aslında biz tam da çocuklara para haftasında, küresel para haftasında öğretmeye çalıştığımız bir konuyu hayata geçirmiş durumdasınız. Çocuklara harçlıklarını idare etmeyi öğretiyorsunuz ve bu da bizim küresel para haftası kapsamında yüksek sesle söylediğimiz bir yetkinlik. Hikayeniz nasıl başladı, nasıl sonuçlar elde ettiniz, neler planlıyorsunuz ve bizler çocuklara paralarını akıllı kullanmaları ve geleceklerini inşa etmeleri konusunda nasıl destek olabiliriz? Buyurun.
Merhabalar öncelikle. Burada olmak çok güzel. Yani finansal okuryazarlık üzerine çocuklar ve gençlerin finansal okuryazarlık eğitimine katkı sağlamak için gördüm ki dünyada hepimizin aslında konusu ortak ve bu da beni çok umutlandırdı. Yaptığım iş, bulunduğum dernek FODER'le birlikte aslında gittiğimiz yolun ne kadar doğru olduğunu da gösterdi. Hepinize ayrı ayrı çok çok teşekkür ediyorum. MANIBUX'ın kurucusuyum. Psikolojik danışmanım. MANIBUX 8-18 yaş çocuklarının ve ailelerin harçlık yönetimini öğretmeyi sağlayan bir uygulama ve en ödemeli kartız, Visa özellikle. Aslında amacımız MANIBUX'la çocuklara ve gençlere doğru finansal alışkanlıklar kazandırmak, finansal okuryazarlık eğitimi vermek. Bu amacı sağlayan bir fintech girişimiyiz. Ailelerin çocukların yanında olmadığı zaman yanlarında nakitsiz kalmalarını engellemek, bunu yaparken de onlara doğru para yönetimini öğretmek tabii ki. Bunu ailelerin kontrolünde, ailelerin çizdiği sınırlar içerisinde ama çocukların kendi harçlıkları da yapabilmelerini sağlamak istiyoruz. Bu amaçla da kullandıklarına emin olmak istiyoruz. Hijyen açısından tabii ki güvenilir bir harçlık uygulamasıyız. Nakiti ortadan kaldırmak aslında amacımız ki pandemide gördük aslında hepimiz nakit hiçbirimizi de olmaması gerekiyor. Artık kartlar bile yetmiyor. Temassız kartlar istiyoruz. Genel olarak baktığımızda biz bütün bu finansal okuryazarlığı çocuk yaştan ailelerin yanında öğretmeye yarayan bir edu-fintech girişimi olarak kendimizi konumlandırdık. Çocuk ve gençlere eşit imkanlar tanıdığımızda ve yarattığımızda geleceklerini kendilerinin şekillendireceğini ve paralarını yönetebileceklerine inanıyoruz. Ayrıca hepimizin şu günlerde ortak konusu olan sürdürülebilir kalkınmanın da planlanması da gençlerin ve çocukların büyük önem taşıdığını düşünüyorum. Ben okullarda uzun yıllar psikolojik danışmanlık yapmış ve bir anne olarak eğitime çok önem veriyorum tabii ki. Misyonumuz olan finansal okuryazar gençler yetiştirmek aynı zamanda bizim ana girişimimizin, yani ana fikrimizin doğuş nedeni. MANIBUX'ı standart bir kart değil, gençlere ve çocuklara erken yaştan itibaren finansal bilinç kazandıran, yeni nesil harçlık sistemi yapan şey aslında. Bu nedenle tüm gençler ve çocukların erken yaştan itibaren finansal bilinç kazanmaları, sadece harcayan değil, biriktiren, hedeflerine ulaşan, paylaşan, finansal özgüvene sahip bir nesil olmalarını amaçlıyoruz ve bu nedenle de harçları dijital hale getirdik. Teknolojiyi çok önemsiyoruz. Günümüzdeki gençlerin ve çocukların teknolojinin içine doğduklarının farkındayız. Bunun için de artık harçlıkların dijitalleşmesi gerektiğini düşündüğümüz için bu uygulamayı geliştirdik. MANIBUX herhangi bir gelir seviyesine özgü değil. Tüm çocuklar ve gençler kendi finansal özgürlüklerini ailelerinin kontrolünde yaşayarak öğreniyorlar. Aplikasyonumuzla ve kartımızla bunu bir arada kullanarak bir yaşam biçimi haline getiriyorlar. Dediğim gibi gelir seviyesinden bağımsız her ailenin çocuğuna verebileceği bir sistem. Sadece harcama yönelik değil, biriktirmeyi, hedeflere ulaşmayı, bağış yaparak paylaşmayı da aşılayan, çocukların bu olguları hayatlarının bir parçası yapmalarına yardımcı olan bir sistem. Bu sistemiyle sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedeflerinden çocukların erken yaştan itibaren finansal okuryazarlık eğitimi almalarını, bunu davranışa dönüştürmeleri ve ileriki yaşlarda birikim yapabilen, kötü borçlanmaya girmeyen, bilinçli paylaşan, finansal açıdan bağımsız, kendi ayakları üzerinde duran bireyler olarak yetişimlerine destek olmayı amaçlıyoruz. Ekosistemin bir parçasıyız, olmayı aslında düşünüyoruz. İşbirliği yaptığımız paydaşlarımızla birlikte çocuklarımızın geleceğini birlikte şekillendirmek için çalışıyoruz ki burada FODER'in açtığı yolda aslında ilerliyoruz. FODER'in bütün anlattıkları, sizlerin, hepimizin konuştuğu şeyleri aslında biraz davranışa dönüştürmeyi hedefliyoruz ve bu bir beceri, finansal okuryazarlık bir beceri, zaman yönetimi gibi küçük yaştan kazanılması gereken bir beceri ve ailelerin yaptığı bir, ailelerde başlaması gereken bir eğitim olduğunu düşünüyoruz. Bu amaçla davranış temelli sosyal etki oluşturmayı hedefliyoruz hep birlikte, bütün paydaşlarımızla birlikte. Sadece Türkiye'de değil, dünyanın birçok ülkesinde çocukların harçlıklarını dijital uygulamalar üzerinden aldıkları, MANIBUX'la kendi paralarını yönetebilen bireyler olduklarını hayal ediyoruz. Aslında burada bugünkü bu konuşma da benim bir hayalim, çünkü finansal okuryazarlık üzerinde bütün dünyanın konuştuğu ve birlikte neler yapabileceğimizi düşündüğümüz böyle bir başlangıç noktası, bir hız noktası olması çok benim için bir hayaldi. Güzel oldu benim için de. Hedefimiz 8-18 yaş çocukları ve ailelerinin dijital cüzdanı olmak. Kumbarasıyla, dijital kumbarasıyla, oyunlaştırmasıyla, marka işbirlikleriyle başka hiçbir şey ihtiyaç duymadan ailelerin ve çocukların para yönetebilecekleri bir platform yolunda ilerliyoruz. Büyük bir ekosistem yaratmak için çalışıyoruz. Aslında amacımız çocuklarımızın finansal okuryazarlıkla küçük yaştan itibaren buluşmaları, tanışmaları. Tabii ki burada bütün bu şeylerde aileleri merkeze koyuyoruz, çocuğa özgürlükler tanıyoruz ve çocukların bağış yapabilmesini, kendi seçtikleri özgürce bunu yapabilmelerini de hedefliyoruz. Gösterebilmek, yaşatabilmek ve bu şekilde de davranışa dönüştürmeyi hedefliyoruz aslında. Bütün bu öğretilen finansal okuryazarlık eğitimlerini görmesi, yaşaması, deneyimlemesi için ellerinde, ceplerinde bir aracız biz. Ailelerin finansal okuryazarlık eğitimlerinde bir aracız. Bunu ailelere yaşatırken, çocuklara yaşatırken aslında oyunlaştırma ve göstererek yapmayı da hedefe ve merkeze koyuyoruz. Onun için de aylık raporlar veriyoruz ailelere. Nerede harcadı, neler yaptı, çocuklar da aynı şekilde, çünkü çocukların da eğer aplikasyonu kullanabiliyorsa, kendi cep telefonları varsa kendileri de görüp kendi finansal bütçelerini düzenleyebiliyorlar. Bunu görerek yapıyorlar. Ne kadar harcadım, ne kadar harçlık aldım, ne kadarını biriktirdim, kendine hedefler koyarak bunu da gerçekleştirmelerini sağlıyoruz. Bu amaçla finansal okuryazarlığı küçük yaştan itibaren anlatabilmek amacıyla 1 liranın bile çok önemli olduğunu farkındayız ve bunu çocuklarımıza da yaşatıyoruz. Çeşitli kampanyalar sunuyoruz. Kampanyalarla nereden tasarruf edebilirim, nerede paramı harcayabilirim, sadece harcamak değil tabii ki, birikim de yaptırarak ama yeri geldiğinde de doğru kaynaklara harcamasını da sağlayarak bunu öğretiyoruz. Böyle bir eğitici, öğretici, eğlendirici bir uygulamayız. Finansal okuryazarlık yolunda ilerleyen. Teşekkür ederim.
Canan Hanım, çok teşekkür ederiz. Gençlere yönelik çağı da yakalamış olan bu girişiminiz için de tebrik ediyorum. Onların görmeleri, yaşamaları ve böylece davranış değişikliğine döndürebilmeleri gerçekten çok kıymetli. tasarruf edebilmeleri, birikime yönlendirebilmeleri ve makul harcamalara, seçtikleri anlamlı harcamalar için paralarını yönlendirebilmeleri hepsi de çok kıymetli beceriler bence. Çok teşekkürler. I think this is the end of our panel. All of our panelists have given their speeches. So I really thank OECD for the Global Money Week celebrations, coordinating them, and that has a very big role in to start the conversations and accelerate the conversations as well. So let me check the Q&A if there is any question. Yes, there is one question. What are the key components of financial education? How the new technologies are affecting the system, like cryptos? How can we teach in these subjects to young people? Who would want to answer this? I think, Bianca, are you typing an answer to this question?
Yes, I was typing an answer, but I can also answer live if that's okay. So I just wanted to actually send a link and mention that, of course, at the OECD, we have defined financial literacy and financial education, and also not only as definition, but also what constitutes the core competencies, let's say, of financial education or financial literacy. And we have defined the financial literacy on different aspects. So we are looking at knowledge, at the skills and attitudes, and at behavior. So these are components that together are very important. It's not only important to have financial knowledge, but you have to be able to put that knowledge into practice. And there are different content areas, of course, that we also define. So for instance, money and transactions, but also other things that are relevant to young people. And I wanted to mention that this work has been done by the OECD together with the International Network on Financial Education. A long time ago, we have developed the core competencies framework for adults and for young people, but also for other target groups. We have one for MSMEs and for investors. And recently, actually, at the beginning of this year, we have launched a new core competencies framework for adults on financial education, but also integrating digital and sustainable finance issues, because we think these are also very important competencies. These are also very important issues that are happening on the market. The consumer need to be aware of. So basically this framework defines over 400 core competencies, we call them, that are important to the consumers and to the individuals. So I will put the link in the Q&A, so you can have a look. You can have a look at that. And of course, it's important to keep in mind that the financial systems are evolving, and digital technologies are, of course, important. We have to keep them into consideration when we teach these concepts to the individuals and to the young people specifically.
Maybe I can add to the second part, answer the second part, about the cryptos, how new technologies are affecting the system. As Ms. Isaincu mentioned, I mean, of course, we have to teach youngsters, we have to give them the financial knowledge, but also we have to impact their behavior and attitude. What happened was, with the development of the new technologies, now the markets are very easily accessible. So anyone can access the markets through a mobile phone. And at any time, you can just make a transaction, be it an equity transaction or a crypto transaction. And the problem here is people are becoming, especially youngsters, are becoming more and more short-term oriented and trading oriented. I am sure Mr. Hariharan would agree with me on this, because this is what we see globally. And also platforms like Robinhood and also Twitter and WhatsApp groups, these youngsters are also being taken to, manipulation traps also, and it's quite dangerous. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to educate them We are trying to tell them about the benefits of long-term investing. But unfortunately, the cryptos are so volatile, and so there are so many, like, let's say, opportunities there. Of course, opportunities come with the big dangers. And what we see is just the feeling of the fear of missing out just pushes youngsters into this area. You know, there are studies that show that the FOMO is roughly like about 30–40% of the reason that people trade in cryptos. So we are working here together with the regulators. So we are trying to convince people that like short-term trading is not profitable. I mean, you can't beat the market. But unfortunately, technology sort of pushes especially the youngsters or the new investors into that route.
Hello. Can I just add to what Mr. Köksal was mentioning? Absolutely right, bang on target, that during the pandemic, what has happened is because of the use of more digital means, more and more youngsters, without even understanding whether it is really good for them, because they're at a convenience working from home. And we have a record 80 million new trading accounts and demat accounts opened in the country. So that is a pretty huge number, which we have not seen over the years. So that was the challenge. So as he said rightly, on one side, we make easier for people to do in the ease of doing business. On the other side, because of the over digitalization, they feel that it is just like that. They need to enter because all they need to is to punch a few things in their mobile phones or in their laptops. So there is a risk involved in it. And coming back to that component of what constitutes in the financial education, I think Bianca has clearly very told that we are also agree with that, and we also do like that of how to impart that knowledge, develop into an attitude, into a skill set, and how you convert that into a behavior. So that is something we challenge. One key point that I want to stress here, and this is some point which I'm sure that may resonate with some other countries as well. We are talking about utilization, we are talking about all these programs and all well, but there is one part of the population who are illiterate. So when you are having an educationally literate person, you can take all these things and all this, but it is a challenge to how an illiterate person can be brought into the fold of financial education. So all these things that we are doing it, he may not be able to operate a mobile phone, he may not be able to operate a website or something. So all these means of communication that we use may not work well for those areas or those jurisdictions where you have a sizable number of population like our country, where the general education literacy is low. So that is a challenge, and we have been addressing that also through various means. So for the youth, what we have done is that since going in their own way of digital, we have created a new app for education. So that app is very simple and easily downloadable, and we have put a lot of presentations and all that. So we launched only in January this year, and we had more than 1 lakh downloads within a matter of a month. So that is very encouraging for us. So the digital means can be good for the youth, they should not be part, or how they should not fall into the, and as Mr. Köksal said, we also found recently that in one particular case, we took an enforcement action where using Telegram, how they are misleading people and how people have got misled and, pumping and dumping the prices of the shares. So it is a very challenging thing for us also to find out such culprits, but we are also working on how to educate them and not to fall prey to that. But ultimately, the one line is that there is no substitute for greed. There is no medicine for greed. I mean, people, whatever may be, that if there is greed takes over one, I don't think that there is any regulator or any law that can help people. So that is a message that we normally give. And also one should be responsible for one's own money. You cannot make the regulator responsible for my money unless I hold responsible for money. I think these are some of the messages which I think we need to really plant into the minds of youngsters. Thank you.
I agree.
We have one more question in the chat. We all agree that financial literacy education as a life skill is very important from early ages. My question is that, are there any data which shows that before and after improvement level, if there are how can we reach those data along with charts that show which countries have developed new life skills to their youngsters by teaching financial literacy as a curriculum subject? Do we have any such data who have embedded financial literacy in the curriculum?
I can just tell you that when we did that, when I spoke about the financial education intervention to the resource person program, we were really worried that whether we were able to reach what we were trying to reach. So when we did a study, it was very, very encouraging for us. More than 96% of the people who participate in the programs who did not own a bank account, they opened a bank account. That was one aspect of it. Whereas on a sizable population, on a similar population, where they did not participate in the programs, the number was about 40%. So there is a very clear evidence that people who are participating in the programs, there is a very well understanding, especially in terms of managing their savings, in managing their investments. I think that is one data point. The another data point that we found was that when we had in far-flung areas like in the forest and tribal areas where have the tribals staying there who are not into the mainstream of the population, where we targeted them and did some programs. So some of them that who were not even aware of the existence of a bank or a bank account, there also we were able to find that some of them, they have opened the bank account. And in addition to that, they have started even investing even in mutual fund schemes. So there is a very clear data listing points available. I'm sure that is the case in many other jurisdictions, that financial education interventions at the right level, in the right manner, definitely yield results.
Thank you, Mr.
I agree with you. Just to add to it, we see that financial inclusion efforts end up in good results, like people open accounts, they become aware. Financial literacy, like when it comes to like long-term savings and maybe going into the private pension system, we need to spend more effort, because when you talk to people about the let's say that the lifespan is extending and there is this longevity risk now, they get like sort of scared and they get impressed by it, but they don't take any action. So you have to keep pushing them. That's why we are using the behavioral science methods to sort of nudge people. And also there is a big trust issue. People don't trust the financial system. Like this is not only in Turkey, it's a global issue. And as CFA Institute, we've been doing this research with Edelman Group for many years. It was called the Trust Barometer Survey. And every year, at the very bottom of the trust continuum, trust spectrum, comes the financial sector and the banking system and media. So media, I understand, but being a banker, I really feel bad that there is no trust into the banking system. On the other hand, at the very top is the technology sector. So people trust technology. So that's why somehow we need to bring technology and financial services together, which is what fintechs do actually. And we believe that that will raise the trust level of people, of course, provided that it's done correctly. Otherwise, when people use telegrams and all that other stuff to manipulate people, then we could go just the other way. So technology could also lose its trust. But we are trying to just eliminate the bias of people to the private pension system, because people are biased. They say, I'll never make money in the private pension system. The government might take my funds one day and things like that, like ideas that will never happen. But so we have to keep pushing and pushing, just financial literacy education by itself is not enough. So then we have to just keep nudging people and eventually just bring them into the system.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
So thank you. We have reached the end of our webinar. It's just on time now. We said we would end it by 11:30 Turkish time.
I think Ms. Isaincu was going to say something maybe after.
Okay.
I wanted to add to what was saying in replying to what said before in replying to this question. Definitely, there's a lot of studies on financial education, its effectiveness on young people. I put 2 links in the chat, so you can have a look at those. But these studies have become more and more frequent recently, and we have highlighted also from the OECD how important it is to really evaluate the programs that are being implemented. But let's say in general, we have seen that for the programs that a lot of times programs that are actually put together financial education with savings accounts also have very positive effects on children and young people. And let's say they fall within 3 broad categories. One, they instill financial behaviors, positive financial behavior. So you see that young people that participate in this studies really start to save or are more aware of their financial resources. They enable asset accumulation and improve opportunities also for upward mobilities, in upward economic mobility, in the sense that you see the effects of financial education on young people also later in life. There have been some longitudinal studies that have showed this, and also there sometimes you see ancillary or halo effects, meaning that in addition to the direct effect of financial education on financial behaviors, there are other effects positive, like self-confidence, like more attention to one's personal well-being, to the community, to resources in general. So there's been many studies, and they're of course very interesting to read. So I encourage you to have a look at the links I put in the chat. Anyways, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everyone who participated.
And we thank you as FODER, and we appreciate your time and valuable information and your insights that you have shared with us today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a nice time ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.